It's a very good morning to all of you, the students, and especially the other viewers. The important session we have once again today, referring to the poetry section, and there is an also important poem, The Roadside Stand. The poem number 4 is. The poem is a contrast to take the earning of the city dwellers and the rural life people. The poet Robert Frost complains against the attitude of the rich men towards the villagers. And in this poem, there is a roadside stand set up by the village people to get some money to fulfill their needs. As we know that villagers are from poor background, hence it is not easy for them to get the money to enjoy the things as the city dwellers do. So here the roadside stands is set up near the roadside in search of the money to live a life full of something respect. And the roadside stand, the people appeal the city dwellers or the rich men to stay there to do or to get something from them. But only few of them stop and rest all go ahead with pride. And now somehow they struggle to get money. After all, the poetess comes to the point that the road passes where the signal yes and n are turned in wrong side. The roadside stand request them, but some of them stop and some of them keep ahead with pride. And the poetess discusses about their life where they use the carrot to sell fruits or berries in the pot which they had made. And along with it, the poetess also discusses the authority in power, the ruling government that always make a promise for their betterment but finally forgets. And after all, now the authority in power discussed about it and they make a false promise to make their betterment. And after all, they make a decision to disroute their roadside stands to the villages where there is a store or a kind of gathering places. Once again, the dark future of the poor return where they were. Hence, the pathetical or the miserable thing for them is that they cannot afford the money whatever they get at the roadside stand. But the ruling in power arranges the things like this. They say that they buy all the things whatever they have and once again they settle them to the theater or the store. Here the poetess describes about the mental agony of the poor villagers who established roadside stand and now once again back to the life where they are in the present time in a poor background because they cannot afford the money from those rich men. Hence, the one thing is that the roadside stand workers feel very sorry and a kind of sorrow which cannot be revealed to anyone, like someone has cheated with someone and the person cannot reveal because of its laughing or a mocking trial. So, in such a situation, the poetess expresses the grief of those village people who feels their roadside stands removal like a sorrow where someone has cheated in trust. The poetess describes the condition of those people, saying that they are teachable sorrow to reveal the fact. But unfortunately, the poet can listen their complaints and cannot accept their miserable condition, their pain, their sorrow. And after all, the poet realizes their life for a moment to think like them but can't own their own grief. The poetess criticizes the ruling party's attitude towards the people. The poor have always been crushed by the upper ones. The poem is the criticism of life related to the poor people in the poor family background, where somehow they earn the money to live a life full of respect, something like the rich people. But unfortunately, they are limited once again to the village life where they were downcast and negative in approach, only looking like the one who are waiting for the hunt and waiting for the money somehow to manage the family, losing all the innovative, creative technique, whatever the rich ones have in the city. Rich ones in the city have the status to live a life full of respect and honor, but hence the poor people can't afford it because they once again in the darkness where they were. And also the poem concludes that the upper class people will teach them how to do the work, how to sleep, and how to manage the lifestyle. Once again, they are poverty stricken and finally found themselves helpless in this situation. Now, the central idea of the poem. In this poem, the poet Robert Frost describes about the poor people's life who somehow try to manage the city money in their hands to establish a roadside stand, to appeal them to stay there for a moment to buy something whatever they sell. But after some time, the ruling party declares their establishment to the place in the village where there is a store or there is a theater, the people's gathering, and to sell their things there. And it is a disappointed mark for the people who establish their roadside stand to live a respectable life. The poem is a criticism of the society where the poor people are always crushed. The poetess complains towards the people who are always under the effect of in such kind of adverse conditions. This is the central idea of the poem. Now the important questions belongs to this lesson is what does the roadside stand appeal the traffic? Answer is the roadside stands appeal the traffic to stay there to buy their belongings. The next question what does the ruling party has a plan to do for those roadside stands? The ruling party has a plan to re-establish them at the place where there is a store or theater to live their life like the old ones. What is the contrast? What is the contrast in the poem to take about rich and the poor people? The poem is a contrast to take about the rich and poor people that the rich are enjoying their life full of respect and luxury, while the other hand the village people try to settle their life near the roadside to get the money but unable to do so. Why does the poet cannot own their grief? The poet cannot own their grief because it only those can realize who feel in such kind of situation. The poet can listen but can't find a solution for them. What type of poem is it? The poem is it a true picturization of the rural life and society where they always find themselves in poor background and poverty stricken. They can't afford for innovation in such a situation. Thus the poet comes to a conclusion with the criticism of life in this important poem. Now you think of this, you read this If you have any difficulty in this particular poetic approach or a poetic lines or analysis, you can ask the questions different ways. And thanks for watching this important poem and how to explain it is.